clients at any given moment, this project has probably been the one I've enjoyed the most this year. What we're going to do is I'm going to walk you through the strategic plan that I've helped facilitate the Little 5 Points Alliance in developing. In this discussion, I'll touch on the work we did, key findings, what the organization prioritized. I am, much like Mac, I prefer to err on the side of candid conversation as opposed to necessarily diplomatic conversation. This is also, this conversation is intended to be very open. So if you have questions or want some additional detail, let me know, although I will keep us moving through this. I am going to go ahead and share my screen with everybody. We should now be in presentation mode. And what I'm going to do also, Mac, I can see you because of my multiple screen mode. If somebody puts something in chat that you think I need to be aware of, would you do me a favor and just shout out and call my attention to it? Great. Okay, so this is the completed work that we did for the Little 5 Points Alliance. I'm going to give you an executive summary of everything that we're going to discuss today. Talk about the work that was completed. Safety formed a key theme in every conversation we had. So I'm going to walk you through the safety deep dive conversation that we had related to this. Identify what the key strategic plan components are, and then there are next steps coming out of this that the Alliance needs to pursue. Context. So at the start of this, I want to make sure everyone who saw this is that the Little 5 Points Alliance is a 501c3 organization based in Atlanta, Georgia. The fact that the Alliance is a 501c3 is one of its strategic advantages. At the beginning of our conversations in doing the strategic planning process, we struggled in our conversations differentiating between the Alliance, the Little 5 Points district itself, the CID, and the Business Association. As we conducted our work, we also ran into a barrier, which is what I call the lanes of authority conversation. Essentially, which organization owns what? Now, when I was retained by the Alliance in the beginning, I was told my job was to do the strategic plan, and the board of directors of the Alliance was working on resolving those lanes of authority conversation. About halfway through the plan, not to mince words, I found I needed to hijack that lanes of authority conversation from the Alliance to at least get it to the point where we could complete the strategic plan. We have done that. The lanes of authority conversation is something that still needs to be completed within the organization, but we've taken it much, much farther, and I will allude to that. The executive summary of everything I'm going to tell you, there actually are high levels of agreement among the people that we chatted with in the organization and the organizations about what is important. I spent the vast majority of my career, the first 25 years of it in aviation, most of it at Delta Airlines. At Delta, we had a term for a cultural phenomenon that we thought was unique to our organization that Little 5 Point shares. And that term, the term we use to describe it is called violent agreement. So at Delta, you know, we would all be saying the same things, but we would be yelling at each other about it. As we stepped through the Little 5 Points planning process, there was a lot of violent agreement about key things that are important. There is a strong desire among the people who are involved in this discussion to preserve the unique, the authentic nature of Little 5 Points while still addressing key structural issues. Overwhelmingly, safety and perceptions of safety underlay every conversation that we had throughout this entire process. And in this conversation, we're going to address certain quality of life elements that also lend themselves to this conversation. Basically, if I can quote Scott Pendergrast, and fortunately he lets me do it, the neighborhood values free expression, but not necessarily lawlessness. And I think that was an important distinction to make in this plan. The true value proposition of the Alliance itself as an organization is that it is a 501c3. So it can access certain philanthropic funds to help drive key initiatives that the CID can't, that the Business Association can't as a C4, and so forth. I think this is important, and I wanted to make sure, Kelly and I had a lot of one-off conversations about the Business Association, and I felt it was important that we represent this in the plan. The experience and the culture of Little 5 Points is primarily created by the businesses in the neighborhood. It's not created by the buildings, it's not created by the structure, it's created by all of you. There is a sense that the neighborhoods, Candler and Inman Park, have had too much say in the evolution of the district in the past. There's also the sense that the Little 5 Points Alliance could be a stronger business successful partner, and there's a desire to see the Alliance be a stronger business partner. Last thing is, beyond the Little 5 Points bylaws, there is a need for a set of governing documents. There is a need for a code of conduct, relationship governing documents, lanes of authority, and governance training. Now, I have provided, this was outside my contract, but I have a big library of these things. I provided some of these documents to the Alliance to help jumpstart the process. And I'm going to touch on those in a second. That's everything that I'm about to tell you in about 12 slides. This is, let me see if I can get rid of this. This is sort of a graphic representation that occurred to me when we talk about the strategic plan, and I'll walk you through the work we got here. But the foundation of the strategic plan for the Alliance has to deal with public safety and quality of life. Building upon that is support for the local businesses and promoting the district. Building on that is preserving the Little 5 Points culture and improving the experience for both the people who live and work in Little 5 Points and the guests to the district. We completely recrafted the mission and vision statements, working together, we created a value statement for the Alliance. I realize this is going to be a little difficult, so I'm going to read them to you. The mission of the Little 5 Points Alliance is to enhance the eclectic, diverse community we love by building and maintaining strong collaborative relationships among the member organizations, by implementing complex initiatives that require multiple stakeholders' engagement and support. The vision is to enhance the magic of the Little 5 Points. It's a historic center of arts, culture, and wellness, while continuing to be a walkable district with a thriving commercial district and an incubator of diverse small businesses. When we did a very detailed strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis of both the district and the Alliance. And when we looked at the district itself, the district is not only a great walkable district, you have what other neighborhoods are trying to create, but it's been a great place for small businesses to start up, grow, and thrive. You don't want to lose that by all of a sudden having, Bennigan's and, Walmart in the district. That's not the goal of the organization. The value statements are incredibly complex. I lifted out the key words. These 8 words were highly repeated all through our conversations: authentic, welcoming, safe, creative. We value uniqueness, diversity, equity, and respect. And in a second, if you look, I'm sorry, if you have seen the one-page strategic plan document that I provided to Kelly, the value statements are much more complex statements about what we're trying to achieve there. The work we completed in this process began by conducting an environmental scan, which involved a SWOT analysis, that's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, as I said, for both the district and for the Alliance. We revised the mission statement, we revised the vision statements, and we created the value statements and value proposition for the Alliance. As I mentioned before, we broke into teams where we focused on safety, businesses, and programming. All of those teams discussed and brainstormed initiatives, ideas, and priorities. But underlying every one of those, safety, both actual safety and the perception of safety, was identified as a key enabler. In these conversations, this led me to seek out feedback and advice from the former chief of police, Erika Shields. Erika and I are close friends. I initially asked Erika to come meet with the Alliance team. Erika politely declined, in part because she was interviewing for the job in Nashville, and she didn't want to take any chance that there was anything controversial associated with it. And being my friend is probably controversy enough in her world, but she gave me very good, candid advice, which I'm going to share with everybody. In phase 2 of this work, we created goals and initiatives for each pillar of the organization. We also had 3, what I call critical conversations about how the members of the Alliance are going to work together. And one of the things that came out of that was the need to clarify the lanes of authority. It's a key enabler of this work. It's a conversation that is in process. It was beyond the scope of my contract, and so I've stepped out of it now. But we have been dogmatic in emphasizing to the board, working out how the 4 or 5 organizations are going to work together is critical to executing this plan. In the last phase, we developed metrics as best we could going forward. The strategic plan serves not only as a roadmap and guide for the organization, it also serves as a report card. This is how the board and donors hold the organization accountable for what it says it's going to do. Because the organization currently has relatively few metrics, we can't actually create targets for things until we start measuring them, but we were pretty clear in identifying what we needed to measure. Now, as I said, public safety and quality of life were foundational to every one of our conversations. So I'm going to run you through the deep dive of that work because it's foundational to the strategic plan for the next 3 years. As I said, there were lots of areas of agreement. And if I can, at the very beginning of the conversation, those agreements as articulated were that safety, both real and perceived, has been a core priority for all of the conversations. Second thing, and it took what I've discovered is the Scott Pendergrast walking tour of Little 5 Points to discover, safety perceptions get mingled with quality of life issues. And we're going to talk about that in a second. And then the third thing is we have to agree on what we want to do in order to figure out how to pay for it. Before you can go to foundations or funders, you have to say, this is the change we want to make, why, and how we're going to measure whether it's successful or not. The framework that we broke down based on our conversations is, first of all, safety and quality of life, or safety and public welfare, I think is how we decided to call it in the strategic plan, really breaks into 3 areas. The first was crime prevention. And as we talked about that, the three major discussions that emerged from the safety conversations and from other key stakeholders was we needed to have a conversation with the police department about the role of APD in the district. We need to have a discussion about the value of technology and a strategy for technology in the district. And we need to have a conversation on the value and the role of the mini precinct in the district. Second thing we got into is quality of life issues. And at the very beginning of this conversation, all of the quality of life discussions were in really big, broad, sweeping terms. It was addressing homelessness, addressing drug abuse, things that are beyond the scope or capability of the Little 5 Points Alliance to fix. Based on conversations I had with Scott and the tour of the neighborhood, and came back and I said, and I tested this with 5 or 6 other members. I said, while I realize homelessness is an issue, Little 5 Points Alliance is not going to fix homelessness for the city. That's a bigger issue than a district can tackle. However, the two things that became key issues continually repeated for quality of life were prevention of public defecation and disposal of drug paraphernalia. And then the third thing that emerged in our conversations, which were very specific to the business association, were license enforcement and addressing illegal activities. And with license enforcement, we were looking at minimizing illegal street vendors. And also, is there an opportunity based on the work that Lisa Adler did a couple of years ago to earn revenue and improve the experience through programming the plaza? Now, based on that conversation, I went off and had my conversation with Erika Shields, and I asked for her advice. And Lieutenant Carroll, Officer Singh, Major Reese, thanks for being here, because you were key to a lot of the conversation that we had. And the first thing that Erika clearly laid out for me to take back to the Alliance is, before the Alliance runs off and does anything like hiring or chartering a private security force like Morningside did, or buying and installing cameras like Ponce Highlands did, the starting point is a conversation with Zone 6 to talk about what are reasonable expectations are regarding the level of policing. Major Rios, as she pointed out, is new. By the way, she said very nice things about you, Peter. She said, overwhelmingly, in terms of prevention and crime for a place like Little 5 Points, officers walking the street has been the most effective form of crime prevention. She said, before you start funding something like the Morningside Safety Patrol, you need to have a clear understanding of what APD can do, is funded to do, and is willing to do. She also said, expect pushback. And her specific point of pushback was that there's a perception in Little 5 Points that Little 5 Points is perfectly fine with vagrancy and drugs. Now, that is not the case. We know that's not the case. The countering argue is that Little 5 Points values nonconformity, but not lawlessness. And if I can use Scott's terms, nothing about Little 5 Points that Little 5 Points has ever said or done is the willingness to sign up be the heroin distribution hub for the Southeast. The second thing, we talked a lot about technology, and her advice was, if you don't know, Erika helped set up the Policing Technology Center before she was chief of police. She said, cameras do not prevent crime. What cameras do is they aid solving crime quickly, which does prevent crime. She said the cameras are most effective if they are monitored at the zone precinct, not down at the technology center, because when a call comes into 911, it's easiest if the zone precinct can pull up the camera and see what's happening, and as they're dispatching their officers there. Furthermore, as Scott and I did a walk through the neighborhood, I was looking for cameras. Existing business cloud cameras, so like if you think a cloud camera is like a Ring camera or a Nest camera, can be integrated into the APD's Project Shield to further expand capacity. So if Seven Stages has a camera, a cloud camera that's on their ticket counter, and somebody gets a call from 9/11 gets a call that something is going down immediately in that area, Project Shields allows the precinct to pull up that camera and see what's going on if it's included. Erika's advice was also don't buy cameras yourself to the Alliance. That was the mistake that Ponce Highlands did. They got some foundation to fund all the cameras. They installed the cameras. Criminals shot out all the cameras, and now they were facing with the expense of replacing them. Said instead, Georgia Power has a program by which they lease cameras on their poles. They own the equipment. They keep them updated. And they're already integrated into the police center. Her advice was for the Alliance to go talk to Georgia Power about what it would take to lease, or for them to lease the camera. Her third element of advice was that an empty precinct does not prevent crime unless it's staff. So Officer Singh, we're glad that you're going to be there. She said, and she further said, the mini precinct model in Atlanta was based on the model in New York, but Atlanta has always struggled to staff and support it. Nothing new. We've been hearing about Atlanta staffing challenges for as long as I've lived here. Her advice was, in addition to Officer Singh, ask Zone 6 to base a bike patrol out of the mini precinct, so that seeing officers coming and going is a good thing. Said that for a district like Little 5 Points, it's easily patrolled and would be a desirable assignment for young officers. And because of the weather we experience, you can get pretty much 10 months of coverage with a bike patrol. So based on that, we took that information into the strategic planning team and developed a goal and a set of initiatives. Also, as we were navigating this process, we also said, let's not wait for a strategic plan to be complete and voted in if we could find quick wins for the Alliance to be working on. So the goal in the strategic plan is being an eclectic, diverse community means that we should be safe and welcoming for all. Our goal is to create an environment where everyone that comes to Little 5 Points should feel safe to be themselves without fear or victimization. The initiatives that we put in place under there is, first off, to create and implement a new relationship with APD, and in particular, offer up the district as a place to also investigate new crime prevention programs and techniques. If you think of what Little 5 Points represents, in addition to being an eclectic environment, it also has a broad sense of physical attributes, a broad sense, and more importantly, a broad sense of demographics. You've got the very wealthy to the very poor. There is a focus on trying to find new ways and new methods of policing. Little 5 Points might be a great test bed for that. Second initiative, as I said, was to leverage technology to improve the crime solving capabilities in partnership with APD as possible. The third was to evaluate and implement best solutions for supplemental security with the guidance of APD. So if APD says the district says we want X, Y, and Z, and APD says we can do X and Y, Z is going to be cheaper, easier, faster to do another way, then we investigate that. But the starting point is the combination to the discussion with APD. The barrier to this with the Alliance was we needed to create a safety and security committee to manage this. I have spent, prior to this gig, I've spent the last 10 years running nonprofits, and I am, a fairly good fundraiser and shameless at asking people for things. A friend of mine happened to volunteer that he is retired and was looking for a challenge. I introduced him to Anna Foote, and basically, we drafted him to be the chair of the Safety and Security Committee. It's a borderline hostage situation, but he's doing it, and he's agreed to start running with this. The quick wins that came out from this was for him to go have the meeting with APD. I'm not sure if that's taken place yet or not. I've been out of the position for about a week now, or 2 weeks now. Investigate the existing cloud cameras into Project Shield, and have the conversation about bike patrols operating out of the mini precinct. Second conversation under this was quality of life. And so the draft goal we wrote into the strategic plan was part of the district's charm lies in its value of free expression and lack of conformity. Our goal is to ensure that that expression does not detract from the quality of life of our residents, our visitors, and our business owners. And the two initiatives that were front and center were address the public defecation problem and address the drug paraphernalia disposal problem. I realized, and I put this question out to the Alliance board at the beginning, having a long career doing strategic planning, I realized that for every complex problem in the world, there's an answer that is clear, simple, and wrong. So I said, perhaps it's just me being naive. I raised the question, could much of this problem be solved if you built 2 public restroom facilities at each end of the neighborhood that had a sharps removal box, the sharps removal being what you use to dispose of heroin needles. The source of that question was much of my early career at Delta took place in Amsterdam. And 25 years ago, Amsterdam was dealing with the same two problems: public defecation and disposal of drug paraphernalia. And by making those two things easier to access, it reduced essentially the aberrant behavior of people urinating on the street or disposing of needles in bushes. There is public land. The city has public land at each end of the district. The Bass Fields at the south end of the district and Freedom Park at the north end of the district. I believe the Alliance has already started down the path of having this conversation with Amir Faroqi.
Oh, is there questions now or questions later?
You can ask now.
My question about that is, my experience is that attracts every homeless person in the 7-10 mile area to your area, because public restrooms, we had to lock our public restrooms because it was a magnet. So just an alternate point of view.
Understand. I live adjacent to Piedmont Park. The homeless do go through the park and use the public restrooms for Midtown. However, they don't linger and stay there. And again, if you have good police foot patrols, which we do in Midtown, that also helps move them on. But it's an important point, Lisa. It's not going to solve the problem on its own.
Yeah, without the policing, it would be, I would not want to be the business next to the public restroom.
Sure. The third thing was to talk about business support and license enforcement. The goal that the Alliance adopted was that Little 5 Points is a great neighborhood for small businesses to start and thrive. Our goal is to ensure that the community is served by licensed, legal, appropriately regulated businesses. And there are a large number of, shall we say, free-form businesses operating in and around the plaza and the properties. So 2 initiatives were to identify, develop, and implement a street vendor licensing and monitoring program. And then also to look at developing and implementing possibly a street entertainer licensing program. The enabler is the district really has to decide what it wants in terms of street vending. Further work is also needed on this particular front. It formed a foundational discussion in the lanes of authority conversation. Everyone was in agreement that they want to do it. There is not agreement yet on who is going to drive it. And I think in conversations Kelly and I've had, that there is a strong argument to be made that this initiative would come out of the Little 5 Points Alliance strategy document and go into the Business Alliance strategy document or plans for the upcoming years. The other strategic plan elements beyond safety, I'm going to go at a high level for these. These are the things that are all represented in there. The value of the district is, as I've said, you already have a sense of authenticity, arts, culture, food that other districts are trying to create. And you've held on to your small businesses. Living in Virginia Highland, our business association focused on a very narrow strategy of attracting what essentially I call, is boutique businesses, most of which were not equipped to survive an economic downturn. The value proposition of the Alliance in particular, as I said, is the fact that it's a 501c3. It can act as a voice and advocate. More importantly, it can act as a funding organization that the Business Association and other organizations cannot. The core value, ethics, and beliefs that we discussed, these are where all those keywords that I mentioned before. We said there's a mutual respect and affection among all the players for the authentic, unique place that is a Little 5 Points, and a resolve to preserve the specialness of the place. Little 5 Points is a place where everyone should feel welcomed to be themselves and safe. We value free creative expression, equity, diversity, and the lack of conformity, but not lawlessness, and respect for others, whether it is their persons, their property, or their opinions, is essential to the quality of the place. Our dream big idea, which I think is always important for a strategic plan to have an aspirational goal, is that Little 5 Points becomes the model for a walkable arts and culture community in the Southeast. I've touched on the goals that we put together for this strategic plan. Essentially the safety goals, the free expression goals, and the place for the businesses to grow and thrive. In a strategic plan, you also have to be clear what are the critical processes that are going to enable you to execute that plan. So the processes that we identified, essentially, these are the teams or working groups, working activities of the Alliance. First is public safety and the community outreach committee. The Alliance had a separate homelessness initiative, decided that based on the conversations we had, the initiatives are now going to roll up underneath this committee. The second critical process is what is going to be the successor to the mobility study. The mobility study gave us a lot of great data that the Alliance has to decide what they want to do next with that. Third is fundraising, and some of these initiatives around safety, security, camera, restrooms, etc., have to be funded. Anna Foote is charged with chairing the fundraising committee. Beautify may stay within the Alliance, may come out and go into the Business Association based on the lanes of authority conversation. Governance is a key issue among all the organizations, and I'm going to come back to that point in a second. Government relations is surprisingly complex for Little 5 Points because you all have, I think we counted 5 separate entities that you have to deal with. 2 county entities, the city of Atlanta, the state you know, so you have DeKalb County, Fulton County, City of Atlanta, State Highways Department. There was a fifth one. I can't think of what the fifth one was, but coordinating government relations is a complex need or role for the Alliance to play, you know, a significant part in. Marketing, brand management, media, and communications played a lot of, got a lot of airtime in the very beginning. And I want to make a couple of points on this. It is, first of all, people kept hearing the term that the district needs to be rebranded. And we killed that statement pretty quickly on. The brand of the district is strong. You know, you don't want to rebrand the district. You do need to do a better job of managing the brand of the district. So we came back, and every time somebody said that we need to rebrand the district, I would mute them for 5 minutes and say, no, we are going to manage the brand of the district. There are two separate brands, though. The first is the brand for the Little 5 Points Alliance. You know, they are, as an organization, they need to own their brand. You know, the concept, we talked about it, you know, in the organizations that the Alliance is dealing with, you know, it's the concept of the brand, not the actual brand, but the concept of it is we're the adults in the room. In terms of talking the message, as opposed to the brand that we create for the visitors to Little 5 Points. The brands of the district and the experience is wrapped up in the lanes conversation, but at the end of the day, the Alliance has no power to create the brand experience or that brand. So managing the experience of Little 5 Points, whether it's the experience they get at the Horizon, at 7 Stages, at Vortex, the Alliance isn't going to create that. Managing that brand, my opinion, lives with the business association. And then the other conversation that needs to take place, or that stream of work, is volunteer recruiting and engagement. All of your organizations are starved for manpower, and there is a real need to effectively recruit, engage, and preserve manpower on an ongoing basis. Now, Kelly happens to be really good at this. Question is Kelly doing this in her role as the Alliance or with the business association? That's a conversation for the lanes conversation.
Dave, can you roll back 1 second?
Yeah,
I totally get the business district owning the brand of Little 5 Points. I mean, that just makes sense because we're the ones that create the brand. I don't understand what the adults, like, why do we need 2 brands? What's the other brand about? What's the adults in the room? Can you expand on that?
The Alliance, so if you want to think of who the Alliance is talking to, they're talking to the CID, they're talking to funders, they're talking to government. The language of speaking to the Woodruff Foundation is very different than the language or brand of speaking to the tourists, the people who are coming through to partake of the businesses. The way I equate it is you talk to your banker very differently than you talk to your customer.
I get that. I think that my issue, I totally understand that. I think my issue then would be that it's not really a brand. It's the presentation of Little 5 Points to those organizations, but I wouldn't necessarily consider that a brand, and I think that that's going to confuse people.
No,
just a thought.
You're right, it does. The Alliance has to decide what, if any, brand it's going to have for itself. I equate it to, using corporate parlance, most of you all are in the B2C world where you sell to consumers. The Alliance is a B2B company. It's not selling to tourists or to patrons. It's selling to banks and to funders and nonprofits. I agree with you. I don't know that I think it needs that much of a brand, but it has to decide what its brand is going to be and how it's going to represent itself as an organization.
Has it done much of that in the past?
No, it has not.
I thought.
It has not. And I think actually, to be honest, that was the starting point of this, Richard. The organization was in an identity crisis. And the identity crisis, if you think of a 12-step program, step number 1 is admitting you have a problem. We're at about step 3. Let me actually, because this actually goes into the initiatives that we talked about. We all talked about these first, these upper 4 already. The street vendor and street licensing, as I said, may move to the Alliance. Develop, fund, and implement no programming may also move to the Alliance. To the Business Association. Sorry, both of these, number 4 and number 5, are still subject to more conversation. But being a betting man, I would stake money on that the lanes conversation will end up with these 2 moving into the Business Association out of the Alliance. The Alliance doesn't really have the skill set or capability to create programming and events. And in terms of licensing, the Business Association has more skin in the game. If you are running Elmer, you don't want an unlicensed taco stand setting up on the sidewalk in front of your business. And at one point, this was actually a little bit of a heated conversation with a member of one of the neighborhood associations saying, well, I might think, pop-up taco stand on the street is just great. And I'm like, really? You want a taco stand that's not subject to health inspection or anything else? That kind of backed off and everyone agreed, yeah, good regulation is probably a good idea there.
But just to be clear, they would be doing this under the auspices of the Alliance, because what we discovered in our program thing is that in order to do the licensing, you needed the MOU with the city to make that possible.
Yes.
So when you say the L5P Business Association is doing it, they're still doing it under the auspices of whatever MOU the Alliance ends up with.
Correct. That would do that. The BA would do the heavy lifting and figure it out with the Alliance running air cover under the MOU.
And currently, isn't all street vending illegal? Would they have to change the law?
Kelly, we talked about this. Remind me right now. Street vending is legal. I know it's legal downtown, but it's a super regulated aspect. I think certain districts have the ability under their MOUs to get that change. But Kelly, you may know that better than me.
Yeah, I think somehow through the MOU, you can do that, but I'm not so sure. A lot of businesses do not want vending at all. So I think that kind of needs to be talked about.
And that was, remember I said that earlier on, that was the district really needs to decide what they want, if anything, in terms of vending. And, you're not, my gig as consultant is done, but if I was advising the BA, it's much better for the BA to come out and say, this is our position on what, if anything, we want and how we want it, as opposed to trust somebody else to develop it. That's as much free consulting as you get from me.
Now I have a questionnaire I want to send out to businesses to see, where we stand on that issue. So
mission, there are 3 mission critical dependencies, and I alluded to these early on. The first is beyond the bylaws, the member organizations need a code of conduct or a set rules of engagement. I tell people that when I was at Delta, when we went through bankruptcy, we didn't find ourselves in bankruptcy by accident. We actively managed our way in because of management poor behavior. And so when we coming out of bankruptcy, all managers had to agree to, all leaders had to agree to a set of rules of engagement of how we're going to work together. I provided that document. It's called Delta's Rules of the Road to the Alliance. I'm not suggesting you adopt it. Delta's a very different animal than Little 5 Points, but I'm suggesting that that the Alliance use it as a model to figure out how the organizations are going to work together. In particular, because The bylaws of the Alliance are so challenging since it requires unanimous consent of the board to take action. The second thing is there needs to be a codifying set of procedures outside the bylaws for how decisions are going to be made, how money is going to be spent, how things are going to be allocated. There is a great model for this. It's a virtual nonprofit that I was part of called the Georgia Water Coalition. So I took all of their governing documents and also provided them to the Alliance to be used as a model to figure out how to solve some of these problems as opposed to starting from scratch. The third thing, and this was my observation, the entire board needs governance training. I provide governance training, but whether the Alliance uses me or not, the board hasn't figured out how to stay in the governance lane and when or how it goes into the management lane. They're in all lanes. My advice was provide governance training, not just to the Alliance board, but provide it to the boards of all 5 organizations. So the CID, the Alliance, Candler Park, Inman Park, and the Business Association are all hearing the exact same things. Whether you all use me or not, I think everybody, first of all, I think it would go a long way to help addressing some of the trust issues that exist between the organizations. I also think it would go a long way in helping give everybody a common lexicon for talking about some of these issues. And then
Dave, I'm trying to figure out how these, I still don't understand how these organizations are structured, so that's part of my research in all of this. But as my understanding, that the Alliance is only a board. There is no management. So wouldn't they be the same?
There's one person. It's a volunteer-driven organization. They have one employee. Even in a volunteer-driven organization, actually more so in a volunteer-driven organization, you still have to have rules for how governance it handles an issue. So if a volunteer, for example, Michael Murphy, who is the guy I drafted to run the security activity, he sits in the board meetings, but he's not a board member. He's a volunteer running the security activity. If a board member is running it, if a board member is running or managing an activity, they have to step out of their governance role for that activity. And it's a complex solution, but more so because you're right. It's a volunteer-driven organization. However, there's also, God willing, going to be more volunteers than just the board members there. I think Mac, also just to add on that, one of the things in an ideal world, probably there would have been no Alliance, that there would have been, the CID would have partnered directly with the BA. The disadvantage the BA has is it's not a 501c3, it's a 501c4 membership organization. So therefore it can't access the philanthropic funders the way a 501c3 can.
Yeah, to speak to that point about so understaffed, that's why I'm so boggled by all the different moving parts. Like there's only 3 of us that care. And why do we need 18 organizations when we're all spread so thin already? It's just like, that's one of the things I'm trying to wrap my head around, and how each one of these things is structured, and who's on the board and who's in a member and what meeting happens when and who's invited and who's not invited. And it's all like cloak and dagger craziness.
I agree with you. I am also mesmerized by your complexity. I have seen one organization that is more complex. That was the Woodruff Art Center. I worked there for 4 years, and I tell everybody, no one in their right mind would set up a 501c3 the way the Woodruff Art Center is organized. You all are a close second, though, in terms of challenge. The next steps coming out of this, the board of the Alliance has to adopt the strategic plan. 2 organizations have voted to adopt it. The other organizations are still discussing it. In terms of organizational effectiveness, I am beating the drum for Kelly on this one. The organization has got to complete the lanes of authority conversation. I built a template for all of the different work activities to say who should be driving on these, and each organization is supposed to be using them to develop their position on that. If there is something that, if everybody comes back and says, you know what, on programming, the BA should own that, we don't need to talk about that anymore. There's no negotiation that's necessary. Let's just codify it and put it over there. Let's reserve our arguing time for the things we actually don't agree on. The public safety and community outreach needs to take place. Michael Murphy's on task to initiate conversations with the APD. Also, under the heading of organizational effectiveness, as I said, they've got to codify the relationships of the member organizations outside the bylaws. Fundraising, Anna Foote is starting work around some of these things to put together a fundraising plan of key initiatives. And then my other recommendation was that the government, that the organization provide governance training to everybody. That is what we did over the last 8 weeks. Additional questions, thoughts, comments, concerns?
I've got a few. I see the needles and the defecation as a symptom of the vagrancy, and the symptom of people just sprawled out over the sidewalks and living their life in little 5 points on the streets. I don't know. To me, that's the bigger issue. These are the symptoms of that, which is a problem. But the bigger issue is, they're sidewalks, they're not side sits, they're not side sprawls, they're sidewalks. One of the things we did when we created the NC districting was made all of the sidewalk areas in both plazas, as I forgot what it's called, but it was clear, it was walkable space. You supposedly couldn't sit on it, but that's never really been enforced. So I don't know what we do about, the people who sort of just live in there and making the place look awful, but I think that's a huge problem for us.
I will. I'll agree with you, Richard. I think it's with, again, this is the scope of what the Alliance can solve. The Alliance can't solve homelessness, and more importantly, it's not a single solution to what the conversation Lisa and I had. Restrooms aren't going to fix it. Restrooms plus code enforcement plus community policing plus a half a dozen other things are what it's going to take to fix it. What else did you have?
Yeah, I think the restrooms with really good policing, but it's been hard to get really good, consistent policing, given certainly this last year, but traditionally, the police force has been understaffed, and add in COVID, add in problems with perceptions and morale, and early retirements and recruiting. It's hard. I would love to see some better policing. I would love exactly what you said, is a walking officer and bicycle police centered here. That with the restrooms, I think could work.
Sure. I think I take it as a really good sign that Major Reese and Officer Singh and are here on the call with us.
Dave?
Yes, Tom.
I would just like to say that I think this has been very clarifying. I think you've done an excellent job of identifying the need to stay in lanes and the need to, for us to be much clearer with each other as to what our tasks are. And, we need to now build on this and stay in our lanes and work with each other. And so I just wanted to express real appreciation for what you have done. I think you've been just very clear.
Thanks, Doc. I really appreciate that. Thank you. And actually, we chose lanes also for one particular reason. I think it's a good expressive terminology. Typically you drive in a lane and another organization drives in a different lane, but at some some organization may have to drive in your lane for a while. So, we said lanes makes more sense as opposed to channels. Channels you can never shift over, lanes you can. But thanks, Don. I really appreciate the kind words.
I'd love to hear from Major Reese or Officer Singh if y'all have any input, since most of this was talking about y'all. And you've been gracious enough to hang out with us for the whole time.
Hey, Mac, no problem. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I appreciate that, and I appreciate that segue. And Richard, you hit on so many points, so I appreciate that as well. So a couple things I'd like to talk about, and briefly, I'll just come right out. And you know, as you were talking about, Dave, what can the police department do? What can you know, what can we provide? What can we not provide? So, and as Richard kind of discussed briefly, the last year has been challenging for many reasons. But one of those, yes, is personnel and staffing. But what I can tell you and what I can commit to for Little 5 Points, we have in theory committed to this in the past, but we've struggled a little bit with the officers that we've had assigned there. You know, I'm not going to say any names, but we've struggled with some of that. So the you know, it wasn't just because of this meeting. Let me clarify. But Officer Singh, I'm not sure if she's still on the call or not,
Yes.
but she is going to be exceptional. That is my belief. She is going to be put over there for a very specific reason. Her engagement, her professionalism, and her overall ability, I think, will help. Again, as Dave stated, many of the issues in this area are not solely the responsibility of APD. We are a component, and we definitely need assistance in other areas. But I will say this, I think Officer Singh is going to be very beneficial. She's engaged, she will be there, and she will have a complete and a full understanding of what it is that Little 5 Points stands for, what it is Little 5 Points expects, and the overall culture there. And I will tell you, coincidentally, Dave, your discussion with Chief Shields, who I miss dearly, I will tell you that, she hit the nail on the head. And Officer Singh is a bike certified officer. And we actually had this conversation just today and in the previous day in regards to what we're going to do for NBA All-Star Weekend. But as I said, coincidentally, she's bike certified. So her ability to get on a bike at the appropriate times, if not daily or every other day or whatever fits into this scenario at the time, I think will be a benefit as well. Yes, ultimately, what I would love to see is a bike team operate out of that facility. But as with all things, we're going to start small and we're going to try and go big eventually. So, so I think that will be a very good benefit. She'll have the ability to ride the bike, and then, of course, hopefully someday we can add to that. Now, what I can tell you is what I can commit to is 8 hours a day in the area of 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. So if the Alliance or the Business Association, Scott, Kelly, whoever, determine that they would still like some type of specific dedicated function in Little 5 Points beyond those hours, then that's the conversation that Dave was saying we have to have on what could supplement that, how it could be supplemented, and then, of course, any financial costs that are associated with it. So I wanted to address that. Also, I would like to, and I'm sure they're more than willing, Scott and Kelly, those are just the two names I say, but anybody that's willing to take a walk around there and openly discuss what some of the perceived problems are, and then we can have an open discussion about what it is that APD can address, how we can address it, and what the perception of the community is to us addressing it, if you understand what I'm saying. So we want to have a harmonious relationship. We don't want to come in there and try and turn it upside down, if you follow what I'm saying. But we want to do a small progression to a culture and what is established and accepted in the culture so that everybody is happy. I hope that makes sense. So those are some of the things I'm looking forward to. And then Dave, I think you said, and I apologize if I'm messing his name up, but you said Mike is going to be on the safety.
Yeah, I believe Mike,
board.
it's Mike Murphy, I think, is the chairman of the safety committee.
Okay, I am open and willing to talk to anybody at any time. Kelly texts me. We discuss the vendors very often, and we do need to make some progress in that area. I will say, yes, you know, you have to work with the city if you're going to have an open air type of vending area. Those are all things, as you said, Dave, through the MOU. Those are all things that get worked out. But like Kelly said, I think you need the consensus of all the business owners, residents in that area on what they would accept or what they desire to be out there. So you got to work through that first, then we can work on the vending thing. But as it sits now, yes, all that vending is illegal in nature, and it is a consistent problem. We're not perfect at it. We could do better, and we can work on that. And so the goal is to work on that with both the business association and of course now the Alliance, and as we progress forward. So, but what I would really like to do is do a walk around there, and then we can discuss, I'm open to discuss whatever needs to be discussed, whether it's the precinct, how we operate it, what's in there, what's needed, the cost versus, what the lease is on it, and those things. So, but I will tell you, I believe you'll see a true benefit to Officer Singh being over there. She is a joy. She is professional. She's very engaged. I think ultimately, though, you might not see it overnight. I think it'll be a good progression. So I hope those are a lot of things, but I'm open for any questions or anything anybody wants to discuss. I don't want to hijack the meeting.
Did you say Officer Singh starts Thursday, March 11?
That's correct.
Next week. Great.
That's correct.
That sounds terrific. The way it's always worked best is when we had an officer who was interested in the area, a consistent officer, being a community police, and getting to know the good guys, the bad guys, who the problem makers are, who the just difficult people are. We've had some long-term officers on that beat, and that's worked best.
I agree with you 100%, Richard.
What's the best way to schedule the walk around with you?
You tell me what is a good time for you, or whoever wants to join you, and then I'll just tell you if it fits into my schedule, if that works. I'm not trying to be problematic, but we got so many things going on, that'll work the best for me if we could do that.
I'll send you a text.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It would be great if Officer Singh could be on that too.
Yeah.
Oh, of course. Yeah, we'll work it out. Now, I will tell you, if it's previous to next Thursday, which I would hope it would be, we just have to do it before about 2 o'clock.
Okay. Okay, great. Thanks.
Mac, you gonna come out? You gonna come out with us? Okay.
Yeah. So I have I've put my email and my mobile number into the chat. Kelly will know this, that the Alliance got a good bit more work out of me than they contracted for. So I'm being pretty adamant about, all right, this is outside of scope, but I'm happy to answer any questions or follow up with anyone. And Mac, I appreciate you recording this, because I told them this is the last time I was doing the presentation without getting paid for it.
It's no problem. Sorry, I couldn't get to my unmute. My other meeting has started, so it's on my phone, getting ready for that one. We've got a presentation from 7 Stages tonight, so that's getting loaded while this is going. But I'd be glad to join the walkthrough. If we can get that scheduled, that'd be great. Be happy to.
Okay.
This all sounded great, by the way. The entire plan sounds terrific to me. I'm glad somebody finally kind of tried to put it back into a situation that will actually function. This was sort of sold to the community initially as a great way to do fundraising, not just asking money from the community, but external fundraising, and that never happened much. It sounds like you're on the way to that. So, and getting volunteers has always been difficult in every organization. So, but I think that sounds great.
Great, thanks, Richard. It was a challenging but rewarding project.
I'd also like to commit the Little 5 Points Business Association board, so many organizations, letters and things, to have our next meeting built around the lanes document and to do our work for our body on that document, so that we can give it to the other bodies to encourage them to do their work on it as well, and then hopefully come to some decision about it, so that we just need to keep the momentum going on this work that y'all have been doing.
Right. Yeah, that sounds good. And we really appreciate you doing this presentation so many times, Dave.
No worries. Yeah, at the end of the day, I'm an extreme extrovert. Attention's always good for me.
And we'll buy you a drink if we ever get out of this COVID stuff.
A drink?
A few. A few. Yeah, I guess we do. We probably owe you a few.
All right, my friends, I've got to go get ready because I too have another meeting coming up this evening. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Good luck. It's been great working with you all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Right.
Officer
Thanks.
Singh, we look forward to meeting you next week.
Yes, sir. I can't wait to work with you guys.
Yay.
See y'all later.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Thanks, Mac.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Kelly, I
everybody.
will pop this. You still there? Yeah,
Me.
yeah, Kelly, I'll pop this recording up on, once it processes, up on YouTube, I guess, and send you a private link so that we could just send that link out to whoever wants to see it. We can also put up the transcript. It'll be a text document with the transcript as well. And then there's also a sound recording. They're just huge files. It'll be like 400 megs, huge file.
We have a L5P BA YouTube.
You
I wonder
do.
if you, yeah, I wonder if you can put it on there
If you give
somehow.
me the password, I can get in.
Okay.
I can upload it there.
Okay, I'll send you an email with all the.
This would be a great thing for the MM Park board to see and or hear, but they had sort of put up a lot of roadblocks about the mini pre